Hey folks, this one's going to be about 30 seconds of one video, 30 seconds of another. This is on the hashtag Black Lives Matter, the police violence and police injury after the Freddy Gray funeral. I watched this already, and one of the things I saw was that race baiters were actually at the funeral, and they were actually stirring up trouble. Now, I don't care what color you are or what race you are. Jesse Jackson generally is there to stir up trouble. He's not there to say this person's dead and this is this way, this is that way. I know that Freddy Gray was killed by an officer, and there should be some retribution, but here's the thing, folks. The officers assigned to that area are not going to be among the people who killed the person in question. They are not going to be among the persons injured who were injured, you know. If you're going to get justice from that police officer or those officers, you're going to have to get those officers. Getting guys that are assigned to the patrol units and stuff like that ain't gonna fucking help. I mean, these guys that do riot control, different police precincts, manage them different. I mean, you know, going back to the Police Academy movie even, you know, riot control was technically, I know it was a movie, but it was done by the police cadets, you know, who didn't have a fucking clue what was going on. Now, we know that these guys are a little bit more seasoned, so these guys are probably the sergeants of certain groups and certain departments and everything. So, this is about Black Lives Matter, hashtag Black Lives Matter, police injured after Freddy Gray funeral. I'm going to play about 30 seconds of one. I'm hoping I can scale it off and do 30 seconds of the actual funeral before everything erupted. As you can see, it's coming from an AOL Associated Press footage. So this is coming directly from it. So let me just play this real quick. I have some decent comments and decent info on this that have nothing to do with the videos. Several people in Baltimore for fallen funeral witnessed these events. So it started at 11, or about 8 in the second, about 35 or so. Okay, this is nothing, this is nothing. As you see, they're throwing them down, see they're hitting them, now they're moving in. So they're closing off. So this is what the race baiters are doing, folks. They're injuring police in the area. Actually, Jesse Jackson and the rest of them should be arrested for this. I mean, this is something that shouldn't be done, folks. It's almost as if Jesse Jackson steps off a plane with 50 to 100 people in his plane with him, and they're on the ground ready for this. Alright, since it's coming from the Huffington Post, I can't do anything in between, so...
Start the interview with a firm handshake. I know! Don't do that! Turn your head and shoulders, instant relief.
Protesters clashed with riot-clad police in Baltimore on Monday following the funeral of Freddy Gray, who died while in police custody on April 19th. In a quickly escalating standoff, demonstrators threw rocks and bottles at the police, who responded using mace against the crowd. Many of the protesters appeared to be teenagers. There were reports of at least 7 officers being seriously injured. Crowds could be seen surrounding a police car, completely destroying it. As mourners filed out of the new Shiloh Baptist Church early Monday afternoon, a police helicopter was already circling the area above the funeral. Soon after, police swarmed Mondawmin Mall, which is just a 2-minute drive away.
Alright. So, yeah. So, here it is, folks. Freddy Gray died in police custody. And race baiters like Jesse Jackson were on scene to cause problems to an already over-the-top situation. You know, folks, I know that people on scene are pissed off about this. I'm certain they are. This is not always going to be a rent-a-crowd or a rent-a-company procedure. People are pissed off when someone dies, especially when they get pretty much killed by the people who are paid to protect them. But here's the problem with that, folks. These government-paid hype men like Jesse Jackson, among others, I almost guarantee you, before they hit the ground with the plane or whatever they come in, however they come in, they already have, rent-a-riot actors that are stirring shit up. If he doesn't get off the plane with like 25 different people that, try to start this and try to, encourage others to do this with them. Now, you and I will never see the inside of these groups to know, how much of this is the actual issue or how much of this is happening on Obama's orders for, civil unrest within the black community, toward law enforcement, toward these people, toward that people. And I know you didn't get to see the whole video that I showed, but one of the major things I would say, folks, is that whenever you get one of these close quarter riots where they start throwing rocks and bottles, whether it was this, whether it was other parts of Missouri, Ferguson, I think this was even true in the beginning of what happened in Ukraine when they did the Ukraine riots that turned into the occupations. Obviously, this isn't true for all purposes, but I've noticed something. Whenever they get in close with like one police unit and one crowd unit and they start throwing things back and forth and everything, and I saw this, and it didn't matter if it was day or night in Ferguson, this was almost always true, and I thought what kind of weird stuff this was. And so what I decided to do was I looked up a few of the videos, and I didn't post them here, and I apologize. But it almost seems like whenever these confrontations start erupting, there's almost always cover above the rioters and the police. In Ferguson, a few times it was at that gas station. Here it was at some kind of school or whatever was across the street there. You saw it had that, I don't know my architecture, but it had that protective ceiling part over benches and a park area or whatever it was. And it always seemed like the confrontations come in a spot that's blocked from the sky. In other words, like helicopters can't find them, satellites, or I don't know the situation, folks. But I'm sure there's some kind of law code that says, do this over here where they can't see it from above. So, I don't know, folks. The numbers always seem to be the same in these situations, which kind of get me weirded out a little. It always seems to be about 25 to 50 people. It never seems to be the same groups of people or allegedly the same people. So I think what happens is, and I apologize if that got loud for a second, I think they get these people hyped up before. They get a few people that are involved in the situation. I'm not going to say that there aren't, 10, 15 people. And they get these other people involved. And basically, what I want to say is I think the majority of this violence is staged. Now, here's why. I think it's staged to get the public's attention, and so that those who want to participate in the violence do it when it's on film, rather than going to the police station, standing by this guy's car, and waiting for him to come out and drag his ass off in the parking lot and basically slit his throat and be done with him, which eventually would happen if they didn't do stuff like this, I imagine. And who would stop, the 25 Black Panthers from going onto a police precinct with AR-15s or some other situation, wait for these guys, or wait for this cop to come out? Obviously, he won't now, but at some point he'll be returned to duty. And, wait for him to come out and then just do what needs to be done or what they think needs to be done. So they do these little demonstrations, these little acting things to say, okay, well, see, now the violence is less, but people were injured, so everything is good now. So it's kind of a catch-22. And personally, folks, I don't care if you're black, I don't care if you're white, I don't care if you're Arabic, if you're Indian or what, and I don't care what race, creed, color, religion, ethnicity, etc. the race baiter is. I think whenever Jesse Jackson and Reverend Al Sharpton, everybody else show up, I think they should be arrested on sight for inciting violence. Honestly, I think the feds need to just lock their ass up and be done with it. And say, look, you guys are here every time this goes down. We need the violence to stop, and it starts with you. We don't know what's going on, but it starts with you. Whenever you give a hateful speech and an officer gets hurt, you're now held accountable. And just let that be the norm. And let them get arrested every single time an officer gets hurt and let them get charged. Let Jesse Jackson go down for 20 assaults on police. He'll be out in 6 months or so, fine. But it'll tell these guys, hey, look, Jesse's got to do this from a VOIAP or something now. He can't appear in person because he's can't have the liability anymore of doing this. Well, that's what they love. They love the hype. And that's why Obama allows it to happen. The cops that killed this guy, you'll never know the entire story. You've heard the story. I've heard the story. I'm not even going to repeat the story. And what it comes down to is common sense that any group paid by the government right now is completely out of its fucking mind, and in some respect or another is paid to see you hurt more and more each time. And that comes down to a basic switch that says, when can we kill this guy? And that's when they're trying to find the switch. It says, these people are not necessary. My job is no longer necessary. We got this guy in custody. It's throwing a fit, punching walls, doing all kinds of stupid shit. He has already hit 3 officers and pulled a gun. You'll never hear about the real details. It doesn't matter if the guy's black. Doesn't matter if he's white. Doesn't matter if the officers are black, the officers are white. I saw a meme on Facebook, and it said, in the near future, if a black guy has a gun on a white officer, the white officer is going to have to call back for backup and have a black officer come in, or black officers come in to stop the black male in question, because any use of force will be seen as excessive and it will be seen as demonizing. and it would be a racial thing for that white officer to defend himself. And it doesn't matter if it's white on white, white on black, Jew and Christian, Muslim on Christian. It doesn't matter, folks. The point's always going to be the same. Right now, the government's told, if you hype this up, you get more money from the UN and more of this and more of that, and that's what they're doing. They're taking these little issues and they're making them huge. There has always been police killings in the South. There has always been stuff like that. We saw it in the 60s, we saw it in the 70s, we saw it partly in the 80s with gangs and stuff, only it was called something different. In the 90s, the gangs kind of ran down a little bit. The ethnicity changed a little bit, and now we see a reintroduction into society of the 60s and 70s into this. So this is what it's going to be. And it's always going to be a shame that these cops are going to have to stand there who probably didn't even know the officers who killed the guy. Probably don't even do anything more than stand there with their riot shields and have to take rocks and all kinds of shit because one of their own decided to go off his fucking meds or whatever and go kill somebody. Now the whole frickin' precinct has to worry about coming home to seeing their family die and everything else. I just don't understand why when these cops step out of line, if it's only one or two or three of them, why the cops don't just do a bad drug raid on their own guy's house and say, oh, well, we tried. Now there's no person that can be held responsible. Okay. Hey, man, the same day, Bob had drugs in his car. We had to give warrants and stuff. I mean, if you had a guy that fucked up that bad in the precinct, you saw what happened to the guy in Ferguson. Those cops that are in that precinct now, they're forever going to have to watch their backs. Because one of their own had to do what needed to, or one of their own had to go the distance on someone of a different race and different color. And I'm not saying I'm not pro-cop, I'm not anti-cop, but the government is hyping this stuff up a lot more than it needs to be, and it's an unfortunate situation, folks. When I die, the family has my wishes. I don't want a funeral, and I don't want to be put in the ground. All I want is close family, close friends. Put it out there in the paper, do whatever you need to do. They'll know who to show up, who not to, and have me in an urn on a table or something. Let people say their goodbyes and this and that. Be done with it. Maybe order Subway or something. That's all I want. Nothing amazing. And just be done with it. There's not a lot of reason to hype everything up, folks. I mean, you go from one life into the other, and it's an unfortunate way that this man died. And I know it was racially motivated. I know that, I believe the majority of the cops involved, I believe, were white. I don't know if it was all white because I am not looking at the police report. I don't have that. So, if Gray was doing something in the background to aid in his death, you and I will never know. If these guys snapped before and got away with murders, you and I won't know that, folks. This guy died in custody. This is why the police are a 20th century dinosaur. Because their duties have been so increased exponentially, nobody knows what the fuck they're for anymore. They're just using them for every Tom, Dick, and Harry situation. Bob gets drunk and hits his wife. They call the cops rather than just take him and his uncles and beat his ass out and back. And then call the cops to come pick him up. And say, hey, we caught him beating on his old lady. We beat his ass, now put his ass in prison. Let them beat his ass a few times. That's the way it should be. Problem solved. Guess what? He comes home after that, guess what happens? He gets his ass beat again if he touches his old lady. He kills her, the family just does what needs to be done. Hey, there's no point in calling in the government every time something needs to be done. They're only there for the corporations and the general public. If it's a private matter, they don't need to be involved. I know it sounds kind of tribal and everything, but I mean, think about how much the government's grown. I mean, they practically have the entire nation wiretapped. No doubt there's probably 15 officers listening to this video as I make it right now, writing notes and everything on how to arrest my ass for this. But, you know, if it doesn't involve police, guess what? It doesn't involve police. If it's a big business, they don't need to involve police. All they need to do is patch up what needs to be done and send the person off. They can't do that. They shouldn't be in business. Period. End of story. If it's, dispute between neighbors, a little bit more of an intervention, but again, why are they there? Why is there a dispute? Did the guy sleep with the chick's wife and now the husband wants to shoot him? Because his wife was being a little bit of too much of a slut? I don't know. Did somebody do something? I don't know. At that point, the police should be called in, but what needs to happen is both groups of people from the houses need to be rounded up and they need to be put in a room, and the fight needs to happen under people who can actually manage it and say, look, you guys have this out, this is going to happen. You're going to get hurt, you're going to have to go to the hospital to get the medical reports done. This needs to happen, you guys need to duke it out and get it done. 6 or 7 shots, you're done, you're on the ground, you're hurting, then we bring in the medical teams to start stitching you up and shit. And then you toss them in for 30 days, release the others after the situation's been resolved, and be done with it. But shit like this, folks, it's bad for everyone.